Hey everyone! On this week's episode of Front End Fire, we tried all the CLI tools for AI so you don't have to. Figma buys CMS Payload to expand its all in one tool offerings, and Mozilla raises the red flag about AI powered Chrome. We've got lots to talk about, so let's get right to it. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Front End Fire, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the latest and the greatest in the front end world. I'm your host today, Paige Niedringhaus, and I am joined by my co-hosts TJ Van Tol.
Hey everybody.
And Jack Harrington.
Hello.
And as we said in the intro, we have a lot of news to talk about, so let's get right to it. All right. Jack, I believe that you did an AI CLI tool roundup. So would you like to tell us what you've learned?
Yeah, I actually installed all these things. And so, yeah, there's a little history here. We had the terminals where we had AI tell you how to do like coding, like do shell scripting and coding and that kind of stuff. This is a whole new set of tools that actually give you full on like project analysis and even coding inside of the tools, as well inside of these tools, as well as MCP access. And there are just a bevy of these that have come out now. So from the big vendors, there's Codex from OpenAI, there's Gemini Code from Google, just came out. There's Claude Code, of course, from the Anthropic folks. There's an Amazon Q CLI. It used to be called Fig. That's one of the ones that really came from that world of like telling you how to do better shell stuff, and is now kind of in the world of like, oh, well, and I'll analyze your code for you and actually write code for you. And these are actually pretty amazing apps, I've got to say, on their own. So if you haven't tried them, you should give them a go. There's also Open Code, Amp Code, and a non-code. Those are kind of, open source versions of these where you can use any model, including Ollama models if you have those locally. So you can install like DevStraw locally and not have to pay for any of this stuff, which is nice. And then some of these are actually kind of creeping back into the editor itself and becoming the engine of the editor. Like Claude Code is also a VS Code plugin. And so you can basically replace GitHub Copilot with Claude Code and get it seamlessly from end to end. Yeah, there's just a lot of cool stuff in here. There's most of these have MCP support, so you can roll in your own MCP tools, including things like database connectors, so you can analyze databases directly. They all have FS file system tools, so you can make changes to your file system, you change your files and all that. And then on top of that, there's stuff you can actually like see. You can set up profiles, and you can say, okay, this is a Tansac Start application, and have all the rules set up so it knows how to write code for your app. Yeah, I think these are really interesting tools. I kind of stayed away from them for a little bit, but we just got so many now that it would kind of like begged to actually just have a look and see. And I came away like genuinely impressed.
Did you do any bench lining on them? Like give them all the same sort of tasks? And if so,
I did.
Like how did that go?
I did actually. I used tic-tac-toe as my benchmark, whatever. Whatever you call it. And most of them, like they mostly got the logic of it right. There was some styling issues, dark mode versus light mode, that kind of thing. Although interestingly, and you wouldn't think this from the fact that it's in the terminal, right? But you could actually take a screenshot, and then most terminals will, if you drop a file onto the terminal, will put the path in there. So they'll actually like take a screenshot as input, and you can come back around and say to it, oh, by the way, you messed it up. It's white text on a white background kind of thing, and give it the screenshot, and it'll go and make the subsequent Tailwind changes to do it. I would say the best performing ones that I saw were still based on Claude Sonnet. So Claude Code, and then any of the open source providers that were using Claude as the model seemed to do really well. Gemini was okay. OpenAI's ChatGPT was okay. But the one that really still continues to take the day is Claude So Claude Code,
Yeah.
and then any of the open source ones that you're using Claude on.
So one of the ones that you mentioned yesterday when we were putting together our show notes was Anon Code. And I actually tried to search for it to put a link in the show notes, and it is down. The GitHub repo is gone. The NPM
And that was
link
fast. That was
is
like literally like
gone.
3 days ago when I looked at this thing.
Well, I saw in a Reddit thread that came up when I searched for it that apparently it was an unsanctioned fork of some Claude 4 code, and I guess
Interesting.
Anthropic went after them. So it's gone at this point.
Interestingly, it was the one that actually didn't work for me.
Oh,
Yeah, it was surprising because it was like it came up and it did, it allowed me to select models, and it was very good about that. It was really well done, well put together.
mhm.
But then when I actually tried to execute anything against those models, it told me that the context window was too small.
Mm.
So I couldn't actually get that one to work. All the other ones were working just fine. So that's interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
a non-code off the list. There you go.
So, Jack, how much did your wallet take a hit from this experimentation?
Not much, couple bucks.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
It is really interesting though. They make that very visible to you. Like
Mhm.
at the end, you get a report about how much you spent. As you're going, you see how big the token sizes are. So, and you can do this and most of them you can do like a compact thing, which
Mhm.
basically summarizes everything in there up until now to reduce the context window size. So you really get to like much more so than I would say you'd experience if you're just kind of like using vibe coding with Cursor or vibe coding with Windsurf. You're really seeing how much you're actually paying for this stuff, which kind of brings you back to the Ollama thing in the DevStrawl thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you got the CPU locally, just do that, or the GPU, as it were.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm glad that you pointed out that you can insert screenshots into these terminal applications, because I didn't realize that that was even a thing that you could do. Just,
Yeah,
take
me
a
either.
picture of your code or your JSON or your browser and tell it to fix it based on that. So that's pretty cool in general.
Actually, it's funny. I just did this right before we went on air, and it was I had gotten this data because I'm a Portland pickles guy right now, and like whatever. So I had Dia go and give me the JSON of the schedule and all the results, and I had this big JSON blob on the page, and I literally took a screenshot of the page with the JSON blob in it, and I just told Cursor like, "Hey, make this look like box scores," and it did. It looked at the JSON. Okay, I get it. Okay, there you go, and it pretty much worked.
So does the Portland Pickles have an API? How did
No,
you
they
get
don't have.
JSON
No,
for it?
Lord, no. Because I was in Dia, I could get to pull up the chat window and then say, "Hey, Dia, take this page that literally took minutes to load." The site is so bad. I don't know what it was written in. It was written in like PHP with some MySQL that only runs once in 100 years, and and so once I had the HTML, I could just say, "Hey, go, just do this." Like give me the results, and it did a good job. So
Awesome.
Dia for the win on that one.
I love that. That is awesome. And I will say I've been using Claude Code to do coding for work, and I like it better than I thought I would. I'm not normally a terminal person. I don't like being in the terminal, but having Claude Code open and having VS Code open so I can actually look at the changes after Claude has made a decision and added some new code and kind of verify that it looks good and works the way I expect it to is actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Have you tried the Claude Code VS Code extension?
I have not.
Yeah.
We'll have to link
let's give
to
that a go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause
Give that a go and let me know. I'm
The last
excited.
time I looked for it, I don't think it was out yet, and I just haven't gone back to the marketplace to check for it since.
Yeah,
I
I
need to
saw
try it out
something on
too.
Twitter yesterday, so if I can I'll send you the link if you can't find it.
Nice.
Yeah, the back and forth. I still love just being in the editor, so I really need to commit to try that. Just do it all in VS Code.
Well, I've found that especially when I want it to expand on files that I've already written and just need, some more functions, or I need to adjust some features, it's so much easier to just kind of point Claude Code towards that file, and it'll read everything in it. It'll look at other files that are, feeding into it or related. and then kind of get a better context than me trying to like shove it all into Claude Desktop. It is simpler in that regard.
And these things are super easy to install. It's just, pm add locally, -G, and then if you've got like your AI API keys already in your environment and they have basically the right names, OpenAI API key, it will pick it up right away and you'll be connected.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is very helpful. Good to know that Anthropic is still winning the battle and I don't need to change my models. TJ, what news do you have for us this week?
I've got some small drama between Mozilla and Google. The background here is that Google has been kind of silently, at least I haven't heard a lot of these APIs, adding a bunch of APIs to their browser that rely on LLMs for the implementation. So, for example, there is now a translator API, a language detector API, a summarizer API, a prompt API, and a proofreader API. And the first three of those, the translator API, the language detector API, and the summarizer API, are in Chrome stable. They're in Chrome 138,
wow.
And they're things that you can try out and you can use. And they're kind of really interesting APIs because they're all pretty self-explanatory. The translator API does what you think it does. You tell it, give it text, and you tell it what the input language is and the output language you want, and it spits them out. Well, the drama here is Mozilla has been kind of raising some concerns about these APIs. And the reason is because it really gets down to that Chrome is using Gemini Nano to basically do the implementations of this. There's an LLM behind it. Why that's a little bit weird is that there's really no precedence for any web APIs being non-deterministic, right? Like typically, if you just ask the web API to do something, it just does it. And so that their concern is that these features could become really tied to the Gemini Nano implementation. If you think about especially summarizing text, how you pass in input can relate to how it gets outputted, how much text you pass in or how it's split up or whatever. And their concern is that people will build implementations that get a little too coupled to Gemini Nano, and that it's going to be harder for other browser vendors to implement these APIs and in ways that aren't coupled to that implementation. So how much I can sort of see both sides of this, because Google's end is like they're adding really useful APIs. These are APIs that some of these I thought like, oh, I like actually legit can go check these out and actually use them in apps that I'm building. Yeah. But Mozilla's side of this argument is that like this is going to make it even harder for other browsers to compete, because now like to build a browser, you have to like bake in a local LLM that's capable of doing these and implementing these APIs. And as we've discussed in this podcast before, Mozilla's had enough trouble keeping up with the web as is. So I bring it up on this podcast just as just like an FYI that these APIs exist, because I had not heard of any of these, and some of them are really cool. And also, I think it's just an interesting discussion about how the web's evolving and just new features and how this is going to be handled moving forward.
Well, it's interesting. I wonder if Google adding these APIs might influence what the working groups work on, the interoperability working groups that we already have. Is that going to become another section that they talk about? They talk about, CSS implementations and web browser standards. Now, are we going to have AI API interoperability as well across different browsers?
Yes. Well, at least in terms of, because they've submitted all of these through the web standards process. And that's where sort of the drama came up, is because Mozilla is part of the web standards process, and they've flagged some of these as not supporting some of these becoming part of the web platform. Because all of these APIs, even though Google's using Gemini Nano for the implementation, they're all just generic APIs. Like they're just, do a translation, basically, not coupled to an LLM. So Google is submitting these as just generic web APIs that any browser could implement. The drama is just the fact that you need an LLM that's capable of doing this. to actually implement them that's potentially problematic.
Yeah, so I've actually played around with the Gemini API back when it was just for inference. Like you could just have a chat with it, like you could with, ChatGPT or one of those. And I came away like thoroughly unimpressed because the Gemini Nano LLM is just garbage. Like not
Yeah.
garbage, but like not really at that level of like the 4.0 quality kind of results thing.
Yeah.
And you kind of come away thinking like, maybe there's something here for like very small, like, maybe command speech type stuff, like change this or do something like that. But these APIs make a lot more sense to me. Like, okay, translate this, those make sense. So I can see Nano being useful for that, not so much for the inference stuff.
I do wonder about the quality of the responses you'll get from like a Nano, like a built-in model. Like, will these translations be good? I haven't played with them, but now I'm sort of curious.
Do you know, is that what is driving the Chrome summaries that we see when we do a Google search now? Is that their own API that's doing the summarization?
They wouldn't be using Nano though, because they're using Nano in the browser because they have to package it with the browser, so they can't, build in their full cloud ecosystem. I'm sure though for their search, they're putting the most powerful model. Like, they've got their like full 1,000 horsepower LLM in the cloud running those things.
How that's financially viable, I still don't have a clue, to be honest. Like, where's the ad revenue coming in? I don't know.
It's really what I wonder is how.
But they put the LLM is basically Google's hedge to keep people using Google. Because the sort of things you get LLM responses for aren't the types of things you typically want ads for. There are some exceptions to that, but they want people continuing to ask Google things like, where do I set my oven to cook green beans? So that when they search, local car repair or whatever, they still go to Google and that they can put those valuable ads there. That's the idea, at least. Now, whether that'll continue to be successful with a lot of people moving their search to OpenAI and other places, we'll see, but that's at least their business strategy.
Okay.
Have you tried like pushing on? Because I actually like engaged with the results, and it comes up with a chat thing that is kind of builds on top of the result. And it was singularly unimpressive. Like the results were terrible beyond just the basic results.
I've not tried that yet. I know I've seen now that the AI mode pop up for me in Google. So I've seen it before, but I've not engaged yet.
Yeah. I've pretty much ignored every AI upgrade or new widget in my toolbar. Like there's in Microsoft 0365, now in my homepage where I see my email, there's a new widget on the side that is like, I guess, Microsoft Copilot. I will probably never touch that widget willingly anyway. Yeah, I don't know. I will look at the AI summaries on Google results, but I've never actually followed up after that with another question.
I mean, they're really good. Like in terms of exactly what temperature to cook pork to. It's like bang. You don't have to wait for a page. It's just nice, right? And as you say, it keeps you using Google, which is what they want. Yeah, makes sense.
Interesting. Well, we will, I guess, keep an eye on that and see if anybody takes heed of Mozilla's warnings and starts to push back on this, or if they just, try and put their own AI bots into it instead.
I have a feeling Chrome just gets what they want and just goes straight ahead. That's probably the most realistic outcome for this.
It's like it.
Unfortunately, Chrome just holds all the cards here.
Yeah. It's just a PWA feature. If it's there, if the API is there, you use it. If it's not, you don't. Yeah.
All right. So my news for this week is that Figma has made another acquisition. They have bought an open source CMS that's called Payload. Have either of you ever heard of Payload?
Yeah.
Before this news, I had never heard of it.
I had never heard of it either. Have you used it, Jack?
Oh, yeah. I have a video on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I like Payload a lot, actually. It's a type safe, secure CMS system. It's great, actually. And it's essentially headless. And so you can go and put anything you want on top of it. But yeah, no, it's got a really great like admin dashboard that you can add your own stuff to. No, it's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I read the press releases. Figma did one, Payload did one, everyone did one. So the Figma one kind of spelled out that when they had their config conference a few weeks or months ago, however long ago that was, they rolled out Figma Sites, which was the all-in-one tool to design, build, and publish their custom sites, which we've seen. The results have been mixed and not as impressed by people who are actually web developers, but it's probably to be expected. And they teased that they were soon going to have a Figma CMS to help expand that ecosystem. So this is that. And they say it'll make it easier for marketers and designers to update website content. So I assume that it's kind of like a WordPress backend where everything is nice and easy to access, change, update, stuff like that. But they're very excited about it. Payload is going to remain open source for the foreseeable future. And Figma just wants to expand its footprint to be more of a central hub for product creation. So you can go from idea and design all the way out to deployment without ever leaving Figma's site and ecosystem.
End from
end to end.
Dev
Exactly.
to prod. And then upgrading in prod. I mean, that's what the whole CMS system allows you to do. Is once you got your templates ready and done, like if you got your product catalog in that CMS, you can just go and, I'm going to change the text on this to, whatever. We're going to go and add this promo. And you just make the change and it's the site automatically updates.
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense just for a design perspective too, to be able to integrate with a CMS officially and just to put in like real content into the designs and have that back and forth. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
that'd
might
be cool to
actually
see.
give WordPress a run for its money.
Something should.
Something should.
Although
Exactly.
it definitely like we're not covering WordPress drama like every week. And it's because there hasn't been that drama, which is interesting. Like a big
It
change
slowed
there.
down dramatically.
Yeah.
Well, it's still going through court. I have a feeling that the lawyers, the only reason the drama kept continuing is because Matt Mullenweg, CEO of WordPress, just kept the drama going like personally. And if you've ever been a part of any legal proceedings ever, you'll know that the lawyers tell you very much not to do that. And I think friends of Matt or lawyers of Matt finally convinced him to stop talking.
Or Matt's wallet when it came to like
yeah, that too.
the charges were like, oh no. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a cool it's a move that I didn't really see coming, but I don't really think about the CMS space because I like markdown files and owning everything myself. But for people who don't want to do that or don't have the technical know-how to do that, I think that's a good move by Figma.
Jack, do you know, because they talk about Next.js integrations, are they coupled to Next, or is it more just like they provide a really good integration for Next?
They provide a really good integration for Next, and they've got like a out of the box solution there. But when I heard about this, I was talking to the Payload guys, and I was like, okay, I'm going to put together like a TanStack thing, so showing TanStack integrating with it, and it was super easy.
Okay.
So this is basically Next.js hosting the admin panel, and you can host it on other stuff, but out of the box, it's easiest just on Next.js. But we'll see. I think over time, hopefully, we'll get a TanStack start version of it.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
Nice. All right. Well, I think we also have some lightning news this week, so let's talk about that.
It's raining, lightning.
That sound is growing on me. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very lightning-y per se, but I kind of like the jingle.
And that's kind of, rain comes lightning. Sometimes. I don't know. Who knows?
All right. Who wants to start their lightning news?
I can go first. So Firefox version 140 is out. The only real feature of note is Firefox now has vertical tabs, which is something I know the community wanted for quite a bit. As a big Firefox user, I turned it on immediately just to try it out. And the implementation is very well done. It works really, really well, but I did turn it off after a few hours because I'm just so used to tabs on the top that I couldn't do it. I don't know. Do either of you use vertical tabs at all in your browser?
No.
I mean, I use them in Arc. Does that
Okay.
does that count? I guess
I
maybe.
think that counts. Yeah.
I guess I'd have to look at the implementation of it to see how it works. So
So-
maybe this might actually have me switching to Firefox
What
if
would-
it's the same.
What's the benefit of vertical tabs in your experience?
Well, I think the whole idea is just space savings, that it's valuable space up at the top of the browser, and the tabs are kind of thick. And if you move them over to the left hand side, some people find the mental model of that a little bit easier.
Okay. Yeah, I've
they
never
kinda,
really thought about it, I
rotated
guess.
little tabs. Is that the way it's done?
It's basically like they almost look, well, it's adjustable. So basically the tabs appear on the left hand side of your browser window, and you have a slider so you can take them from little icons, just the fav icons, all the way you can expand them out to be the normal length of tabs, and you can kind of expand, collapse
Okay.
based off of
All right.
whatever width. And then
Okay.
they put some
I can
things
see
on
this.
the bottom of it too. So you'll have your tabs up top, and then there's a few links at the bottom, and you can make it so you can have a LLM. So for me, I had ChatGPT, and there was a button to just launch ChatGPT in a little window that you could use at any time, because it's always there in the left hand side. So like I said, the implementation was quite good. I just found that my big thing is I use tabs. I drag tabs from the top so often, like, because I have multiple monitors and I sort of drag them around, and like having to go all the way to the left hand side of the screen to grab them, to drag them. That's the thing that bothered me, and I just got annoyed enough that I turned it back off.
It's the little things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I have a very hard time imagining that I would find that preferable in most situations. I'm just used to them up at the top. I mean, I can group them if I need to, and that hides a lot of tabs and makes it easier, but yeah, I don't think I really want to do that.
It was interesting to try, but
Sure.
I found it wasn't for me.
Very cool.
Speaking of trying things and them not being for you. So a couple weeks ago, I was all like, oh, I'm going to try Mac OS 26. And so I took my actual working laptop and upgraded it. And then it's only because I've never really been stung by upgrades before, but I got stung really hard. And it didn't sting right away, which is interesting. It kind of worked out of the box. It was a little bit slower on the development build. And then I guess about a week ago, or maybe whatever, the whole Adobe suite stopped working, which is kind of fun because I kind of need that now and again. And then other things like Raycast just silently fell away and stopped working. And I'm like, yeah. So I ended up actually doing a full revision, which is actually not easy, because when you want to reinstall fresh, it was going to reinstall fresh with the dev build. So I had to go and create physical media to go back to Sequoia. That was fun. And then I ended up having to literally just completely erase my drive, and then it was a process. It took about a day. But I will say I learned one thing that's really cool. If you use Homebrew, you guys use Homebrew?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So you can do this thing where you do Homebrew dump and then Homebrew import or something like that, and you can literally create a dump file of your entire Homebrew setup, and you can put that store that off. And then when you get your new machine or whatever, and you want to just start from that, you literally just say, Homebrew import, and it'll go and bring in all the casks and all the formula and all that stuff. And I got to tell you, a lot of my stuff is on Homebrew, including the apps, full on. And now I'm even oh, if it's Homebrew, I'm good, because I'll continue to do that in the future.
Did it take 17 hours to
No,
reinstall your environment? No.
So slow.
No, I don't have Comcast like Paige does.
Yeah. So,
I have a real internet connection.
I have a real internet connection.
I don't have the string and the soup cans that she does. God.
That is pretty cool, though. I I use Homebrew whenever it's available, and it always takes forever. It does to install and like check everything and update all the things that I don't
Well, it's got to
use.
go and update everything, right?
Oh my God,
Yeah,
Ruby
that is
and
one thing that's kind of a
Python.
pain in the butt.
Yeah, but
But
it is.
But it typically just works, which is the
does.
most important thing.
Yeah.
Well, Jack, we won't say we told you so, but
Yeah, you told me. So that's fine.
we might have, yeah.
Everybody gave me crap. My wife gave me crap. My sister-in-law gave me crap. Everybody gave me crap. They're all like, "Don't you know?" I'm like, "Yes, I know. I know. I know."
So you get good content out of this, though. Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
I think that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
You could probably do a video of how to downgrade Sequoia because it is such a massive pain to roll back on any Mac version.
Yeah. Yeah. It's terrible.
I've got one final lightning round topic, and it's about, of all things, Anthropic and books. So the background here, there was a big court case because actually there's a lot of AI court cases going on right now, but one of them reached its end this week. Basically, a group of authors had sued Anthropic for using basically copyright infringement of books, claiming that Anthropic had illegally used their books as part of training its model Claude. So Anthropic mostly won this case. A federal judge ruled that Anthropic's use of legally purchased books, and that phrase will come back here in a minute, legally purchased books is fair use. So basically, if Anthropic has actual copies of books, it is fair use for it to use it as part of training its model. Some interesting things came out in this case, though. So one thing that Anthropic did that is getting them in some trouble is that when Anthropic first went to train their model, they, quote, amassed digital versions of pirated books to avoid what CEO Dario Amodei called legal practice business slog. So that's not great, and there's now a separate court case to handle that. However, at some point, Anthropic got wind of the fact that it's probably not a great idea to use pirated books as part of your training processes. So in February of 2024, they hired Tom Turvey, the former head of partnerships for the Google Books book scanning project, and tasked him with obtaining, quote, all the books in the world
Just like that.
for training Claude.
Just like that. Yeah.
And so
okay.
what Anthropic did is they spent millions of dollars physically scanning books to build Claude. So basically, they would buy millions of books, they would cut off their bindings, they would scan them into digital files, and then use the digital files to train Claude, and then just dispose of the books.
That's straight bananas.
What?
That's bananas.
Yeah, this is a real thing that they did. And this was deemed fair use because the books that they had actually obtained and processed into their systems is fair use because they bought a copy of the book in order to do this. And this is apparently, this is a thing. Like, I mean, you could argue this has been wildly successful for them as part of this training process. And I don't know. I just thought the whole thing is wild.
That sounds so insane on so many levels.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Wow,
also the
that's-
fact that they gave him this task of go get all the books in the entire world is also insane. So
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, it sounds like he was largely successful. I mean,
Yeah.
so there's been some people, I've heard arguments that the U.S. government should propose that just make all of its work that the Library of Congress and whatever has just available for training models to help, so that we don't want to live in a world where this is what you have to do to compete. Like if you're gonna start up an
Yeah,
LLM
okay,
or work
fair
on
enough,
it,
fair
like
enough, yeah.
it's kind of ridiculous for you to do this. I mean, it's just so inefficient and weird.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to have worked for them, I guess. Although they are going to get in trouble for what some of the stuff they did early on, where they basically just pirated everything they could.
I am I mean, I guess I shouldn't be because it is the tech world and we pirate everything as soon as it's available in a digital format. But still, this was a company that knew it was going to be public and make money and try and monetize this as they have. And they still were like, yeah, let's just go pirate the copies of everything for now. It'll be fine. Nobody will care.
I think this is like a perfect example of asking for forgiveness rather than permission.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you could argue that this was a smart strategy for them because, I mean, we talk about Claude on this podcast. Claude is doing decently well, and presumably their use of these books is just going to amount to a slap on the wrist for the amount of funding and usage they're getting now.
You know, but interestingly, we all use Claude primarily for code, which isn't really impacted by this much at all. I mean, obviously there's O'Reilly books and all that stuff in there, but you know, for the coding stuff, it's probably going to be getting stuff off the web.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a drop in the bucket compared to the rest of the world of books.
All of world books ever.
Yeah.
That thing. Yeah, crazy.
Wow, that is interesting. But yes, there are a lot of lawsuits that are happening. I saw a couple weeks ago, I think it was the New York Times, or maybe it was Disney. It was Disney and Marvel are suing Midjourney. They're going after Midjourney for basically stealing all of their artwork and no attribution, no compensation, no nothing.
Don't mess with the mouse, man.
Yeah.
Don't mess with the mouse. You get the ears.
That is a big company. Midjourney's in for it.
Oh, yeah.
That one has a little more credence too, because the reason Anthropic won at least the copyright portion of this is the judge basically ruled that you can use this stuff as part of your training processes as long as you don't spit out exact. Basically, if you do ask for Harry Potter book 1, if Anthropic spit out Harry Potter book 1, that would actually be a problem because that is that puts the copy in copyright. But to use it as part of its training process is deemed fair use. In a way, it's similar to a person reading all the books in the world and then writing, blog posts, having gained that knowledge. Now, whether you agree with that argument or not is a whole different thing, but that's basically how it proceeded, or how it was ruled from a legal perspective.
Sure, but the idealized perfect LLM actually could do that. If it was trained on Harry Potter book 1, it would be able to predict the entirety of Harry Potter book 1 if you wanted it to. So it's a super weird gray area here, for sure.
They probably could. The only reason that Claude doesn't is Claude has something in there to tell you, if you ask for it, to tell it not to do it. Like if you just had the raw LLM without Claude's, without Anthropic's guardrails, it probably could. And those guardrails are probably what saved Anthropic.
Probably. All right, well, that is some good extra news. Let's talk about what's making us happy this week.
Let's do it.
All right. TJ, what's making you happy this week?
So we just got back from a road trip. We went to New York. We kind of took a weird route. We went from Michigan. We had a wedding that we had to go to in Indiana. And we cut over to New York, all the way to New York City, and then came back through the Canadian side, so up by Niagara Falls and back through Canada into Michigan. It was a lot of driving. It was a long trip, but we got to see some cool stuff. And I thought I'd just mention one park that we stopped at that I didn't think was going to be all that interesting, but turned out to be absolutely gorgeous. So there's a state park in New York called Watkins Glen State Park. It's kind of towards the middle of New York, kind of like the southern middle-ish area. And there's a town of Watkins Glen, and there's the state park that is best known for a gorge there around the river. And it's got this like 2-mile walk that is absolutely stunning. It's really well, there's a really well-marked trail through it. You go down into this gorge, it goes along the river, there's waterfalls everywhere. We had a really nice day for it too, so it was a really, really pleasant walk. And it's not a park that ironically, I'd heard of the racetrack at Watkins Glen, which is also right there. It's just a few miles away, but I had no idea there was a really gorgeous state park there.
Very cool. That is, I've never heard of it before, but if I ever find myself in that area, definitely make sure to check it out.
Yeah, it's a very random area. That's the only thing. Like that if we wouldn't have been on a road trip and quite literally driving through the middle of New York, we wouldn't have
Mhm.
seen it. We kind of picked it out because we had so much driving to do. We kind of looked on the routes and said, all right, what's here that we can use to break up the drive? And that this was kind of the highlight of the stops along the way.
Isn't that fun when you like, it's just some random thing we're just going to go do. And then it's like, oh my God, that's incredible.
This was good. Yeah.
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 I love
Because we did like we went to New York City and our kids had never been, so we did all the touristy things, right? The Statue of Liberty, all those sorts of things. But those things you kind of expect and you know what you're getting yourself into. But it's typically moments like this where you're off the beaten path that are the things you tend to remember over time.
Yeah. Very cool. All right, Jack, what's making you happy?
Well, he kind of stole my thunder with that one because I was going to talk about Tamalich Falls, which was, is an area called the Blue Pool, and there's a 2-mile hike out to it, and it's also wildly beautiful. So go check that out if you're in the Oregon area. But I will say another thing that's been making me happy of a sort, I guess, is watching the entire Final Destination series. I got sick with COVID, and I saw as part of just being down. The most recent one, Final Destination, whatever it is, Bloodlines. And I was like, oh, this is actually kind of stupid fun.
Yeah.
So I ended up, watching the other 5 movies. I don't know how many it is, but they're just kind of fun, stupid movies. And so, yeah, if you get a chance and you're okay with that kind of horror gore thing, which is pretty much what it is. All it really is, it's like OSHA the movie. It's like, look at all this stuff that you shouldn't do in a shop. And then, of course, like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Like, some sort of like oxygen bottle like rips through your body or something like that, in 3D, of course. You got to get that,
I like that they seemed, I have not seen the newest one yet, but I've seen at least 2 of the older ones, and I like that they've kind of they're like in on the joke. It's been more campy, and that's kind of what makes it fun.
Oh yeah,
and they're not overly gory. At least, like, I don't know, that's at least not the point. I think the point is just the fun plot line and to have some fun with it.
And the whole like kind of mousetrap nature of the kill, it's like, oh, it's not, and then they're kind of like, there's the water that's going along the bathroom floor, and you're like, and then the electrocution thing, and you're like, but it's not that. No.
Yeah.
It's this other thing over here that you didn't expect. That, yeah, and it's all just this full setup for that. Yeah, not exactly like a mind bender, but fun.
Nice. So that sounds like the right thing when you're sick and not wanting to spend a lot of brain power on a show or a movie.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Well, I am going to pick an audiobook that I listened to recently. I've gotten back on the Libby audiobook train, and this one is called Rock, Paper, Scissors. And it is not a mystery novel in the sense that of some of the other ones that we've talked about, but it is one that kind of bounces back and forth through different points of view until the very end. And there was a good plot twist at the end. So if you want something this one is set also in Scotland, I think. So all the actors and the voiceover people have English accents, which is always fun to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking for something like that, where you kind of are piecing together the plot based on various people's points of view, and you go back in time and then you come forward to the present day again, it's a fun listen. And it, like I said, at the very end, it did take a turn that I was not expecting. So it was also fun in that regard. And it was a good listen or a good read, depending on how you like to do novels like that.
I look forward to recommending it to my wife because every time I'm done with one of these, she's like, what was on the What's Making Us Happy list? And in particular, what was Paige's What's Making Us Happy? So, and she's all into the audiobooks, and Libby as well. So,
all right. Well,
in fact,
rock, paper, scissors. That's a good one.
Rock, paper, scissors. Okay. We listened to the audiobook of The Wild Robot. On one of our journeys with the in-laws. Mm-hmm. And that was actually really good. Like the movie and the audiobook and the actual book are different enough that I think both hold up really well. But Great. Fantastic.
Nice. I'll put that on the list then.
Yep, I added rock, paper, scissors to the list. I'll have to check this out. Looks good.
Yeah, it's a good one. All right, well, I think that is going to wrap us up for this episode of Front End Fire. So thank you, as always, to our sponsor, the Blue Collar Coder YouTube channel. And if you want to get in touch with us, we're on Discord, we're on YouTube as well. All of our episodes are up there, and you can find us on all the socials. So thanks for listening. We will see you next episode.
Bye, everybody.
See you next time.